Hello. My name is Charlotte, and my life story could easily be a novel, though not necessarily the type you can't put down. It's more like yanking off a band-aid, swift, a bit painful, and somewhat forgettable. If you have some time to spare, grab a seat, because I have a story that might make you feel a bit better about your own quirky family. Let me introduce you to my so-called family. Imagine a charming home with a white picket fence, fun backyard barbecues, and a dog named Buster who's seen better days for Wise. Sounds picturesque, right? But beyond that idyllic facade was a different reality. In our household, my older sister Sophia was the reigning queen. She was the star, while I played the role of the unnoticed worker bee, diligently buzzing around in the background. Sophia had a way of winning everyone over. She was blonde, with a dazzling smile that could brighten even the gloomiest places, and a knack for charming our parents into getting whatever she wanted. Whether it was the shiny new bike or the last slice of pizza, somehow it was always Sophia's. Even the cozy sweater I had my eyes set on for Christmas ended up as one of her trophies. Sophia's charm was unstoppable. Mom, Dad, can I please have that dress for the prom? A flutter of her eyelashes, and our parents were putty in her hands. As for me, I was left with the hand-me-downs and leftovers. It wasn't a tale of woe and deprivation. I had the essentials, clothes, and a roof over my head, but let's just say I wasn't exactly being spoon-fed from a silver platter. Our dad was the kind of man who returned from work each day with grease-stained hands and a weary but genuine smile. Mom was a magician in the kitchen and had a keen sense for nonsense unless it was spun by Sophia. When Sophia got accepted into a prestigious university, the celebration was monumental. It was as if Christmas had decided to settle in our home indefinitely. By the time my future came into question, the festive atmosphere had long since evaporated. Money's tight, Charlotte, they'd say, or real life is about making sacrifices. I can still picture us sitting around our kitchen table, its leg wobbling, as my dad nervously scratched his neck, signaling his discomfort with the impending discussion. We've been crunching the numbers and it just doesn't look good, he admitted. My mom chimed in as she stirred her already well-mixed coffee. College is expensive. Maybe it's time you thought about getting a job to help out. They skirted around the issue as if they were trying to tell me that Buster had joined the circus, rather than admitting that my dreams might be too costly to support. So, there I was, not even 20, faced with the harsh reality that higher education was out of my reach. But I wasn't ready to give up on my dreams. My plan was straightforward. Work tirelessly, save every dime, and one day, make it into that courtroom with ESQ proudly attached to my name. Despite the odds, I was determined to forge my path, fueled by resilience and a relentless drive to succeed. My days weren't exactly filled with glamour. By day, I was a barista, skillfully navigating a sea of coffee orders and evading pastry crumbs. By night, I transformed into a dishwasher, my arms buried in soap suds at a diner that definitely had its heyday in some distant past. You've got to be the hardest working person I know, Charlotte, Maria would often remark as we shared the cramped, dimly lit kitchen. Maria, a freelance graphic designer, had a contagious laugh that seemed to brighten every corner of our neighborhood. Yeah, agreed Camila, tuning her bass guitar while prepping for her band's next gig. If anyone can make it, it's you. Their encouragement felt like a gentle pat on the back, a cheering squad right beside me, pushing me to keep going despite the grind. Things seemed somewhat on track, albeit a little delayed, because what's life without its hiccups, right? But then, suddenly, everything took a nosedive. One morning, I woke up feeling like I was hit by what I assumed was a brutal flu. However, it turned out to be something much more severe. In no time, I found myself in a hospital bed, staring at a pile of medical bills that rivaled the thickness of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Miss Charlotte, your insurance took care of some of it. The lady in the billing department informed me in a tone that seemed perpetually on the verge of delivering bad news, which she did spectacularly. You still owe quite a bit, she announced, sliding a bill across the desk that made my heart plummet. There went my college fund, devoured by an array of numbers and decimals that I struggled to grasp. I tried to negotiate, to arrange a payment plan, anything. Look, I've got nothing, I told her, feeling the urge to just disappear. It's not personal, Han. It's just the system, she replied. But to me, it felt incredibly personal. Back at our apartment, the mood was as dismal as the leftover pizza from the night before. There go the textbooks, I muttered, thumbing through a legal dictionary I still hadn't memorized. We sat there, 3 dreams deferred, enveloped in the harsh reality of our tight living space. What next? Camila asked, breaking a silence that had overstayed its welcome. I didn't have a clear answer, just a swirl of question marks in my mind. I was back at square one, yet it felt like I had regressed even further than where I started. Start over, I finally said. What else can I do? I'm not cut out for giving up. It sounded optimistic, even convincing. Despite the setbacks, the idea of giving up just didn't sit right with me. So with a renewed, albeit cautious, resolve, I decided to face whatever came next head-on. After all, wasn't resilience supposed to be my strong suit? Even as I spoke, I could hear the slight tremble in my voice, betraying the firm front I tried to present. Both of my friends nodded, but their faces were etched with lines of concern that they couldn't quite mask. Yeah, I get it. Our house is just too packed, I whispered into the phone, the words tasting bitter as they escaped my lips. My mom couldn't see the lump I swallowed, or the way my hands trembled. You're tough, Charlotte. You'll figure it out, Dad chimed in before passing the phone back to Mom. There I was, slumped on a bus stop bench, the cold, hard surface pressing against my back, plotting my next move while life buzzed busily around me. Sophia, with her new baby and seemingly flawless life, hadn't even picked up the phone. Maybe she thought bad luck was contagious. Family, right? The guy next to me chuckled lightly, having caught the tail end of my conversation. He wore a jacket that had seen better days and sported a 6 o'clock shadow that was more like 9 o'clock. Yeah, family, I echoed, not really in the mood for a chat, but finding an odd comfort in talking to a stranger. Hey, don't let it get you down. You look like you've still got some fight in you, he remarked, crumpling the paper bag in his hand. I forced a half smile. Got any tips for sleeping on one of these benches? I joked, though the humor didn't quite reach my eyes. He glanced over, squinting as if assessing the bench. Buses run all night. Ride from one end to the other. Safer than a bench, he advised. His suggestion lingered in the air just as my phone buzzed, a low battery warning, just another highlight in a day full of low points. As the bus pulled up, hissing to a stop in front of us, its doors opened, inviting us to wherever it could take us. He climbed aboard, finding a spot among the weary faces of nighttime commuters. I stayed back, bus fare clenched in my hand, not ready to commit to aimlessly riding in circles. Instead, I grabbed my suitcase and started walking, the wheels drumming a lonely rhythm on the sidewalk. The street lights flickered overhead, and under their intermittent glow, I made a silent vow. This isn't how my story ends. Holding on to that thought, I walked through the night. Each step was an act of defiance, each breath a promise to myself that I would claw my way out of this mess. Come on over, kid, Aunt Harper's voice crackled through the phone, sounding like a lifeline pulling me from quicksand. I never thought I'd be so relieved to hear her raspy voice. When I arrived at her place, she wasted no time on pleasantries. You look like hell, she greeted me bluntly as she ushered me inside, her hand firm on my back. I spent the first few days in her guest room, trying to piece myself back together. Aunt Harper didn't press for details. She wasn't one for cozy heart-to-hearts. But as we sat at her cluttered kitchen table, surrounded by plants as resilient as she was, she finally set down her mug and fixed me with a piercing gaze. What do you want, Charlotte? What do you want? It was unsettling, like being on one of those makeover shows just before the big reveal. Her straightforwardness made me nervous, yet it was exactly the push I needed to start putting my life back in order. Weariness had seeped deep into my bones, leaving no room for pretenses. I want to be a lawyer, Aunt Harper, I declared, my voice tinged with an urgency I couldn't mask any longer. She nodded, seemingly unsurprised by my revelation. If that's what you're set on, she began, her fingers drumming a rhythmic beat on the table, harmonizing with the tick-tock of the old wall clock. Then, with a solemn tone, she added, "I'll pay for your education." My heart leaped as if a surge of hope had electrified it. "Are you serious?" I gasped, grappling with the sudden turn in my fortunes. "Serious as a heart attack," she quipped, but her finger cut through the air, laying down her terms. "You keep your grades up. No slacking." Her stern words were underpinned by a glint in her eyes, a clear sign of her faith in me. My response was an uncontrollable grin. "Really? You're not just saving up to splurge on bingo and whiskey." She chuckled as I stood up and embraced her, my gratitude muffled in the hug. "Enough of that mushy stuff," she grumbled, albeit with a pat on my back. "And you're going to work for me part-time. I need more help around here than I'd like to admit." "What kind of work?" I asked, eager to do anything she needed. "The kind that needs doing," she answered vaguely, dismissing the specifics with a wave of her hand. "We'll start with taming that jungle you call a hairdo, then move on to some yard work tomorrow." I laughed, a real, full-hearted laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. "Deal." "And don't think you're just being nice," she warned. "Slack off, get lazy, and the deal's off." "It won't happen," I assured her, the gravity of the situation settling back in. She studied me for a long moment, then smiled. "Good. Now help me with these damn plants. They've got a better social life than I do." The rest of the day, I was elbow-deep in soil, pruning and watering. The dirt never felt so good against my hands. Aunt Harper made sure I worked hard for every penny she was offering, but I didn't mind. College was no walk in the park. Aunt Harper had thrown me a lifeline, but balancing the books and bills felt like juggling knives. Every morning, I'd wake up to the buzz of my alarm, my desk a mess of books and notes, dreading the academic feast I had no appetite for. When hunger struck, I'd dash to the campus food joint where Genesis, the regular cashier, would eye me knowingly. "Make it a double long night ahead?" she'd guess. "Yeah," I'd agree as she handed over the coffee and sandwich. "You're going to burn out if you keep at this pace." "Can't burn out when you're on fire," I'd retort, though inside I felt more like smoldering embers than a roaring flame. Nights blurred into a frenzy of flashcards and frayed nerves. Calls and texts often brought reminders of unpaid bills or messages from Aunt Harper checking in on my day, to which I'd always reply more positively than I felt. Then everything changed again. Aunt Harper fell gravely ill, the kind of sickness that quiets a room. I spent countless hours by her hospital bed, squeezing her hand, struggling to find words. "Who's going to scold me for eating cookies in bed now?" I tried to joke through the heavy silence, grappling with the reality of possibly losing the rock that had kept me anchored. During one of my visits to the hospital, I tried to keep things light despite the heavy air around us. "What am I going to do without you?" I joked, though the laughter didn't reach my heart. "You better not," Aunt Harper rasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "Leave crumbs everywhere." We never discussed the looming issues of money or the future. It was our unspoken pact, the giant elephant in the room dressed in a tutu that no one dared acknowledge. After she passed, I found myself in the stark, impersonal office of a lawyer, feeling more anxious than I'd ever been before any of my exams. The lawyer, a stiff man with a precarious comb-over and glasses perpetually slipping down his nose, dropped the news that felt like a bolt from the blue. "She's left you the house, Charlotte." "She what?" I stammered, my mind scrambling to catch up. "And," he continued, shuffling papers, "a considerable amount to cover your student debts. The rest is for you to figure out." Harper was clear about making your own way. Despite the knot in my throat, I managed to ask if she'd said anything else. "Just that she believed in you," he adjusted his glasses, adding with a slight smile, "and that she'd haunt you if you gave up." I laughed through tears. That was Aunt Harper, all right. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a strange mix of heaviness and relief. She had given me a legacy, not just in bricks and mortar, but in the steadfast belief that I could finish this journey without her. I was deep in preparation for an upcoming exam when I heard it, 3 sharp knocks at the door, the kind that didn't bode well. Opening the front door of what was now my house, I found my family assembled. Mom, Dad, Sophia, and her husband William, poised like characters in a reunion episode of some surreal family sitcom. Sophia didn't waste a moment, her eyes scanning the room like she was shopping in a high-end store. Look at us, all together again in this huge place, like a twisted sitcom, isn't it? She said, almost gleefully. Dad started, using that authoritative tone that commanded silence and obedience. We've been talking, and we think this house should be for Sophia. She's got kids, a family. I raised an eyebrow, my voice dripping with disbelief and sarcasm. No kidding. Wrong house for that chat then. Mom's lips pinched tight, a telltale sign she was gearing up for a guilt trip. You'll understand when you have your own family. This is just practical. I must have missed the part where practical meant kicking me out of my own home. I shot back, arms crossed defensively. Sophia tried to sway me with her usual charm, batting her eyelashes before turning to William for support, who shrugged noncommittally as always. Sweetie, this house is wasted on you. We could fill it with life, laughter, children running around, and what? Turn Aunt Harper's parlor into a playroom? The very thought scorched my tongue. There's no need to be rude. William found his voice, albeit reluctantly. Right, because showing up to claim my house is peak civility. I snapped back. You're being selfish, Charlotte, Dad pronounced, his voice thick with disapproval. My laughter was harsh, filled with years of overlooked feelings. Selfish? After years of only remembering her on birthday cards? Convenient memory you've got there. They shuffled uncomfortably, clearly not expecting their plan to unravel like this. Charlotte, Mom softened her tone, her last attempt at persuasion. Think of the family. I see now. I am the part of the family that actually gave a damn. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the room, broken only by Sophia's predictable attempt to guilt-trip me further. But before she could finish, I cut her off. Just leave, all of you. As they left, disbelief and entitlement heavy in their steps, Dad turned back with a final jab. You'll regret this. I stood my ground, meeting his gaze squarely. The only thing I'll regret is not changing the lock sooner. The door shut firmly behind them, sealing off my old life and guarding the new path I was determined to tread, armed with Aunt Harper's legacy and my resolve. Once again, the silence was mine. This latest family showdown was another unwanted throwback, a stark reminder that my inheritance was more of a battleground than a gift. Exhausted to the bone, the kind that clings and weighs you down, I pulled into the driveway after a grueling double shift at the law firm, yearning for nothing more than a hot shower and the solace of my bed. As I tried to unlock the door, the key just scraped against unyielding metal. What the? I muttered, fiddling with the stubborn lock. That's when the door swung open, revealing Sophia, nonchalantly balancing little Emma on her hip and sporting a smug smirk. Change the locks, Charlotte. Surprise. My eyebrows shot up. Like hell you did. This is my house. Not anymore, she quipped, bouncing Emma, who remained blissfully ignorant of the unfolding drama. Anger surged within me, fiery and quick. Watch me, I retorted, already dialing for help. Sophia's smirk faltered as I spoke into the phone. Yes, my sister has illegally entered and changed the locks on my house. As I hung up, Dad's truck rolled into the driveway, both he and Mom emerging as if gearing up for an intervention. Charlotte, be reasonable, Mom pleaded, her eyes welling up theatrically. I'm past reasonable. I snapped back, the sharp edge in my voice slicing through the air. William stepped forward, trying to tower over me, his voice low and supposedly intimidating. Come on, Charlotte. Don't make a scene. I held up my phone with the recording app in full view. Say that again, William. For the camera. His complexion quickly matched the pallor of sour milk. The situation escalated as sirens pierced the tense air, and a police cruiser pulled up. 3 officers stepped out, all business, their stern expressions matching the gravity of the situation. What seems to be the problem here? One of them asked. Dad's voice lost its usual command, faltering to a whisper. It's a misunderstanding, officers. Family matter. Stealing my home is a bit more than a family matter, I countered, arms crossed defiantly. The officers assessed the situation with experienced eyes, their demeanor shifting as they gathered the facts. All right, let's start with some ID, and we'll go from there, one suggested, notebook in hand. Reluctantly, Sophia passed Emma to Mom and rummaged through her purse. The legal dance was underway. They asked questions, we gave answers. My parents tried to weave their narrative, but the deed to the house, clearly stating my ownership as per Aunt Harper's will, was incontrovertible. Can you prove you live here, ma'am? One officer inquired. Better. I can prove I own it, I replied, retrieving the will from my briefcase parked in the car. Unfolding the document felt like drawing a deep, cleansing breath, the first since this whole mess began. The officers scrutinized the will, their expressions shifting from skepticism to understanding. Seems clear to us, the officer concluded, handing back the documents. I suggest you hand over a set of keys to Miss here. Otherwise, we will have to proceed with charges for breaking and entering and unlawful eviction. Like extracting teeth, Sophia reluctantly handed over a set of keys. Mom and Dad quieted down quickly, and William looked like he wished for the earth to swallow him up. The officers escorted them off the property, and as they left, Mom shot me a look as if I'd committed some unspeakable crime. But the property was mine, Aunt Harper's legacy was secure, and as the door shut behind them, I knew that maintaining my ground was not just about keeping a house, but preserving my dignity and honoring the faith Aunt Harper had placed in me. The rules were clear and uncompromising. There was no space for sob stories. The door shut behind me with a definitive click, like the last word in a heated debate. Leaning against it, adrenaline surged through my veins, causing my hands to tremble. Weary, I dragged myself into the kitchen, desperate for the comfort of a hot cup of coffee. As the kettle came to a boil, my mind raced with plans for my next steps. The solid click of the lock echoed through the room, marking an end to a long, exhausting ordeal. My home, now a fortress, seemed almost complete. Maybe I'll get a big, fierce dog, I mumbled to no one in particular. I wasn't particularly fond of pets, but the idea of a large, intimidating dog that could deter unwanted family visits actually brought a slight smirk to my face. The silence that had fallen between my family and me was deafening, louder than any argument we'd ever had. There were no phone calls, not even a simple text. Sometimes, late at night, when the silence became too much, I'd find myself scrolling through my sister Sophia's social media. She had a flair for dramatic posts, pictures of the kids looking sad, and captions cleverly designed to tug at my conscience. Little Timmy sure wishes he had a yard to play in, one would read, or Emma's third birthday without Auntie Charlotte. I'd scoff every time, wondering if she thought I'd forgotten the reasons for my standoff, or if she hoped I'd relent out of pity. I remembered the times I had pleaded for financial help for my education, only to be met with lectures on responsibility and tough love. I could still feel the sting of the door slamming in my face when I needed them the most. My foundations had crumbled then, but now I was building anew on my terms. My life was a product of my own making, my dues paid, my battles fought alone. No amount of manipulative photos would rewrite our history. I had contemplated posting a sharp, cutting reply, but decided against wasting my energy. My desk piled high with files. I focused on my work and my clients, the real aspects of my life that demanded my attention. Sometimes, late into the evening, I'd pour myself some bourbon neat and sit in the very backyard they had once tried to claim. In the quiet, I'd contemplate getting that guard dog, a Rottweiler or a Mastiff, perhaps something with a menacing bark to make them think twice before encroaching on my space. My phone remained silent, like a limb I had learned to function without. When I went to bed, I slept soundly, free from the ghosts of guilt or restless thoughts of what might have been. I knew that everything from the walls that enclosed me to the roof above was unequivocally mine. Each night, the last thought before sleep claimed me was whether or not to get that dog. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But the choice was entirely mine, and that was enough to give me peace.